I started the plastering yesterday. I'm really quite pleased with this bit here. Still wet. It's dry around there. It's got some things placed around to stop people knocking into this corner, but yeah, I'm really happy with the finish. And really, I've learned to do this, doing the most complicated shape imaginable, you know, because I've never done this before. So yeah, that's very, very cool. Very pleased with it. I mean, I still got a lot of cleaning to do. You can see all the clay splashed and so on. This edge here, I'm not actually doing this corner just yet, because there's going to be a big sculptural cob element on here, so I want to keep well clear of it so that when that's done I can just fill in the bit between and have it all blended together, rather than having a really, you know, jarring joint in here kind of thing. So yep, that's the way that's going to happen. So I'm not doing this corner just yet, but the rest of it is all getting finished. Yeah, I'm really pleased with it. Yeah, I got one more process to do on it with sealing it and giving it a good polish up, but I haven't done the other armrest for the other end of the bench from this one yet. So I'm going to do a quick how-to when I do that, so I'll show you that. So experimented a little bit, and this is my recipe for an earthen plaster. So I've got a bucket of clay slip. That's quite liquid, but by clay slip standards it's quite thick, and then equal amount by volume, so a bucket of sand, okay, good enough, and then I'm going to give that a quick mix. But that's not it finished yet, but just give me a minute. There we go. Right, now I experimented with this because, you know, I have. If I was just to use this, this would be fine as like a mortar or something like that, you know, where it's not going to be an issue. But anything that's going to be seen, what happens is, because it's only a 50-50 mix, it's very clay rich, which, you know, I'm using because, you know, clay's free for us, so it's stupid to not. But it needs a fibre adding, and what we're using is this stuff. And this is cattail in the US, greater reed mace in the UK. Some people call it bulrush. It's not a bulrush, but you know, it's often called that. And what we're using it for is, as you fluff it up, you can see, wow, just how much of it. There we go. And it just fluffs up so much. So for this whole batch, we're going to, I mean, you can see just the volume that's created. So these seeds can blow all over the place. It's not going to cause a problem unless they get into like a watercourse or something like that. And, you know, every watercourse has already got them anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But we're going to put 2 sticks, 2 seed heads into this batch. And I might even put, that's quite a big one, so I'll call that good with just the 2 of them. And that acts like, I mean, just this ridiculous stuff. Look at it, it's phenomenal. People use it as like an alternative to down in down clothing and stuff. It's been used for all sorts. It's just an amazing crop. There's so much stuff you can do with Greater. Right, before that blows away, I'm going to get it mixing again just to get it covered up. Go. Right, now while that mixes, so the purpose that serves is like rebar in concrete. So even though, I mean, they're tiny little seeds, and when they're mixed in, you can't see it in the surface. I've polished it up and all the rest of it, you can't see it in there, but it creates a really nice wear resistant surface that can withstand, you know, lateral loads really well. So, you know, the odd ding and so on, it'll cope with, because it's going to be a surface finish. And also, if you take like a biscuit of it and snap it, you can actually see the fibres where they connect. It makes a huge amount of difference to the strength, even though there's no strength at all in these seeds. I mean, you know, it's just fluff, you know, there's nothing to it. So it makes a really nice, like if you're doing cob and you want to put a surface finish on that, use, you know, really finely chopped straw. It's rather than, you know, the big long strand stuff for the surface coat. This is exactly the same, only much more fine, because obviously, you know, it's, you know, tiny little seeds. And yeah, I've been really impressed with the way that it's worked. So we'll have a look just how it's coming together. I'm going to call that good, I think. And the advantages with this stuff, you've got limitless working time. I mean, you wouldn't want to go too long. Now I've added the fibre. If this sat for too long, that'd just rot out. You know, it does need to be used and dried out relatively quickly. But I mean, it's nothing compared to using any concrete-based or cement-based material, or like a gypsum plaster. It's and when time I've finished, I don't clean the mixer out, because I'm just going to make some more tomorrow anyway, so it doesn't need to. It's not like cement where it'll trash your, you'll trash your cement mixer or leave it in. This stuff, it doesn't matter, because you can just hose it off anyway. So, and you can see, I mean, the amount of stuff on the floor, because when I wash it out, I just dump it on the ground. And when I'm finished, probably in a few days now, I'll just dig all this, I'll put it elsewhere, and away we go. Because everything that's going in here, it's all from the land itself, apart from the sand. And I think that's from pretty nearby, but I need to find out where, because really, that's the only thing in this whole mix that wasn't from the land itself. So the clay was mined digging a pond anyway. So, you know, we've had that as a byproduct of job I was already doing. The typha, the great reed mace, that came from the wetland filter that comes from the duck pond. So effectively, you know, the ducks have helped produce our plaster by growing the crop that we need for it. Yeah, it's phenomenal. Really cool stuff. I like this plaster. Right, I'll show you how I put it on. Right, I'm on to the second arm of this mass now. Now, first thing I did was I sprayed it with water, just get it fairly moist, because it's, you know, it's been weeks since this had any moisture in it, so it was really baked on hard. You know, it was like, you know, really rock hard, very dry material. So I just sprayed it down with a fairly standard spray bottle, and I find that if I take the nozzle off completely, it gives me just the right sort of jet for soaking it down without, you know, eroding it with a direct jet. I mean, you can switch it to mist, but because it's creating back pressure onto it, it takes a lot more to press the trigger at that point, which is fine if you're just watering, you know, wetting a plant down. But when you're trying to get like 2.5 litres or whatever of water onto cob, you know, you're doing a lot of that, and you're gonna just wear your hands out. So that takes all of the hard work out of it. It goes on really fast and wets it down. Then I used clay slip, which is just watered down clay that's been screened, so it's like a very loose slurry almost, and I rubbed that all over it just to act like a key. And you can see the difference here. You know, it's still dry around this side, and on the top here is where I put the key on. And then the next stage is just, I mean, I've done this with trowels and all sorts, and what I found the simplest way is just to get a handful of it. There we go, and then just smear it on. And it's a way of getting, I mean, I don't want completely straight angles with this. That's the thing, I was trying to get a better angle here, but it's not easy. Right, so again, I've got a handful of it, and just smear it on. You can see that's going on quite nicely. And if I've got a high spot or a gap, I can just do that. And I'm going to keep doing that until I've got this whole thing, or this side and a bit of the top of it anyway, covered. And then I'll let it set up a little bit, and then give it a second coat just after it's dried off a little bit. And at that point, then I'll come through and start giving it a little bit of a polish, but I'll film that when we get to that stage. So that's had a bit of time to set up, so yeah, I'm pleased with that. It's still wet, but you know, it started to firm up. Now, some people do this with a bottle or a hard stone or something along those lines. Something that's, you know, hard and shiny and has got a fairly reliable contour. You don't want anything that's got weird shapes to it. What this is a glass puck that's used for holding down the top of like sauerkraut and things like that. They're really expensive things, but you know, this will last me forever doing this. So you see it's still quite rough. It's just as it went on. I'm going to start even, smooth pressure. In fact, this is quite firm, so I could probably get away with, there we go. See, when it's soft, you can't do this because you just make an awful mess of it. But I'm not even using much pressure. All I'm doing is polishing out and evening up, because obviously that's a really smooth surface, evening up the shape of it. And you can see that, you know, this section here is already a lot smoother. And I'm not going to go all the way down because I've got a bit of a fillet as that goes into the stone. So I'll come back and I'll finish that with a different tool. But here we go. See, it's a bit deeper at the bottom here, so I'm digging in a little, so I don't want to do too much of that. So there we go. And if it gets too claggy, you can just dip it in water and it'll bring up more of a shine. But you can see how that's coming along really nicely. So what I'll do when I go to that stage is I'll give it another half an hour or so, and then I'll give it another quick once over just to polish it a little bit further. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing, but on the side and on the back here. I've only done this section because it's easier for filming, you know, because obviously, you know, the house is, you know, still full of furniture and all sorts. So I'll give this a spray down with water. I'll give it clay slip, and the same on the back here. In fact, I'll do it all in one process. And then I'll use more of the plaster because I got more than enough. And I'll put it all around the back here, and then I'll give it a while, give it the first polish, and then the second coat, and then the second polish. And yeah, just keep building up the levels. Because really, I mean, I could get away with the trowel here to a degree, but I'm limited then to it being a really flat surface. And this is a hand-finished thing. I'm not really obsessed with making it perfect. But if I've got curves like this, you can't really do that with the trowel because it changes in profile all over it. And around the back here, I mean, there's different levels and steps and all sorts. So, yeah, I'd have to spend a lot of money on trowels to try and get a flat surface with all the different shapes that I've got. It's just easier to use. See, I got a bit of a divot in there, so because I got a bit built up on the edge, I'm just going to use that, and I filled it in, so it even generates its own filler. I mean, sometimes you'll come across a really big dip, and you can't do much with that. Now, what you can do sometimes is give it a bit of a up on edge so that it's got more of a shape that'll go into a slight depression. Because as long as it's all smooth, I'm happy, and I'm not worried about it being any particular shape. I set that with the cob itself. You know, the earthen plaster that I'm putting on here is just give it that really nice surface finish. I'm really pleased with this. And, you know, bear in mind, I've not done this before. This is my first cob project. This is my first earthen plaster project. It's really not that difficult. And with things like this, it's just try a few recipes, see what works, depending on what clay you've got. And I mean, we're lucky here, we don't have a particularly expansive clay, so when it gets wet, it doesn't swell up. It just more or less stays the same. So when it dries out, it doesn't crack too much. So down in here is where it's deepest, so it's a little bit softer. So I'm going to have to come back in here probably afterwards and finish. And where's my other tool? Hang on, don't move the camera, we'll just be a sec. And the other tool that I'm using is this thing. This thing's been phenomenal. I mean, it's, yeah, crusted up with plaster at the minute, but it's got that nice finishing point on that edge, and it's got like a little trowel tip on that edge. And with that, with it wet, in fact, let's just, yeah, you can do very small areas much more easily. And I also use it, you know, I've been digging out pointing on the front edge of it and all sorts. But really, I mean, between that and that, that's just about everything I need. And yeah, this will last me the rest of my life, and so will this. It's not bad as, you know, a plasterer's kit goes, is it? If I was doing big areas, I'd probably have, you know, a bit more professional trowel work. But I bought a pair of these in stainless steel, and I started off using them, and they're really good for getting material on, but for finishing it, I still prefer this, even on a flat surface, so you get that, you know, slightly wavered effect. As I don't want like a gypsum plaster quality finish, because it's not, you know, why dumb down to the lowest standard? I don't really want that aesthetic. So yeah, you get the idea. So I'm going to do that all the way around all of this, and then continue to polish it another couple of times as it dries. By then it'll probably be tomorrow morning, so I'll better show you what it looks like in the daylight when it's partially dried up. And then we're going to start with the oil soap seal on it. And yeah, I've not done that either, so that'll be another interesting experiment. But yeah, all right, I'm going to crack on with this. So there have been a couple of changes with the bath heater since I last filmed. I've finished the plaster work and I've finished the coating on it, and I've actually started work on some of the wall cladding and bits and pieces. But yeah, it became a bit urgent. We had friends and family coming to stay all at the same time. We needed something to sit on, so I didn't have a chance to film. I just, you know, went straight at it and blasted straight through it. But really it was variations on a theme what I was previously doing, so I'll just show you what I've done. So at this end you can see basically I did a second coat of plaster and then polished that up with the polishing stone, and then I went through and polished it again when I put the olive oil soap polish on. But I'll explain what I did there in a bit. But yeah, you can see that's all round. I still haven't polished down below, that's still raw cob, but you know, that's just pretty much ready to go. And at this end I'll show you what I've done here. Now you can see it's got a nice sheen to it, it's got a nice mottled effect. Really pleased with it. You see the only crack I've had really is here, and it's so minor, and it looks, you know, almost like a marbling type effect, so I'm not even worried about it. I'm not going to bother repairing it. I could fairly easily, but yeah, I'm really pleased with this section. It's very smooth. You know, I'm incredibly happy with it. I'm not as happy with it in places like here. You can see there's still low spots, it's a bit rough, and the same up here. There's a few places where I'm not massively impressed with it, and to begin with I was thinking I'm going to hack off the plaster and redo that part of it again. Since then I've calmed down a bit, and I think, do you know what, as it becomes a bit worn, it needs a bit of, you know, touch up and a bit of care anyway, I'll just, you know, do these sections differently, because also this is the first thing of its type I've ever built. So I've never done earthen plaster, never mind doing, you know, this sort of hybrid Tadlac kind of effect. But yeah, I mean, where it was completely smooth and done with a trowel, it's gone really beautifully done. I'm very, very happy with it. I'd use that on a wall with no hesitation at all. It's a really nice effect and should be pretty much maintenance free. But yeah, around here, for example, where, you know, where the shapes are more complicated, I'd spend more time polishing it smooth and then use this effect. So something to learn, but so I've still got to do a few things with it. But you know, that has really come along, and I've started putting in the that's recycled pallet wood, because I like the look of it. We used some of it on an outbuilding, and I thought actually I'd really like that inside the house. So these have been sanded a little bit more, but basically to create the same effect. And we need to put the cushioning on it still, but this is just to set us on. It's ones that we've, you know, scavenged from an old sofa and all sorts of bits and pieces, just to have something to sit on. But as ever, still really impressed with it. This thing's amazing. So, but yeah, that's where it's going at the minute. The plaster work is done effectively, and I suppose the next video will probably be after I've done, you know, redone the pointing at the front here, just give that its finished effect, cleaned up all of this around the pipe work and so on. Yeah, probably got some better cushions on. Doing a little bit of plaster work around the top there, just because I'm sick of looking at that wall. It's hideous, but it's horrible. Finish paneling that up, at least as far as there. I want to put bottle bricks higher up, but that's going to have to wait. I've got other jobs that are a more urgent job than that, but I want to bring it up high enough that, you know, you can sit and put your head back and so on. You're not going to get insulation in your hair. But as everything else is always balancing the business against the house and so on. So it's, yeah, I'm going to get this finished and stop it for the summer probably. But yeah, it's an amazing thing. Oh, and putting the floor back in, so that that'll look a lot nicer. Well, it's a chipboard floor. It's not the best. It will be changed eventually, but you know, it's still going to look a whole lot better than it is now. That's the thing with transitioning to a more natural house over time. You know, it's just a bit at a time as things need to be swapped out anyway. We're using better materials, but everything's a compromise, same as most people. But yep, so that is the next stage of the mass heater completed.